All right, my name is John Boik. I will be speaking about a model that I just put together, a model for what I would call a fundamentally new economic system. My talk is modeling dollar and community currency flows in a virtual US county using Python. And this model is based on the proposal that's in my 2014 book, Economic Direct Democracy. You could purchase that book at Amazon.com and other retailers, but it's actually available for free at our website. So if you're interested, go to principledsocietiesproject.org and you can download it for free from there. This talk, I will end up showing you some code, but in order to have the code make sense, I really need to talk first about the model. And then to make the model make sense, I really need to give a little bit of background to this whole project. So we start with some background. The proposal in the book, the economic model, seeks to answer the question, is there some other type of economic system outside of the capitalism-socialism gradient that could in some sense be optimal for a society? Almost every nation in the world today, barring just a few, have economic systems that exist somewhere on this gradient between capitalism and socialism. They're all called mixed economies. The US, for example, has a mixed economy, perhaps leans a little bit more towards the capitalistic side. A country like Sweden, for example, leans a little bit more toward the socialistic side. But just about every nation in the world fits on this gradient somewhere, and I'm interested in the question, what's outside of that box? And the motivation for that is because the economic systems within that box are really not serving society very well right now. We have a host of problems, very serious problems that we need to deal with. This slide just shows one of the problems in America. The bottom green line, this is a fairly flat line, a 40-year flat line. This is the inflation-adjusted family income in America over the last 40 years. And you can see for the lower 60th percentile of folks, income has been flat for 40 years. There's been really no increase in income. On the other hand, the upper 5th percentile has seen a tremendous income gain. And if I were to graph the upper 1%, or particularly the upper 0.1%, it would be sky high. The wealthy are doing extremely well, and have been doing extremely well for 40 years. And the majority of the population has essentially seen none of that gain. So that's one problem, income inequality. And I don't know if any of you have read the recent book by Thomas Piketty, Capitalism in the 21st Century, but he essentially stamped capitalism as an inequality-generating type of system that leads to plutocracy in the end. Naomi Klein just has a new book out called, I love the title, it's called This Changes Everything, Capitalism versus the Climate. And that book is talking about the role of capitalism in furthering our climate difficulties. Pope Francis just came up with this, a paper that had this quote in it last year. I'll read it very quickly because I think it's so powerful. He says, as long as the problems of the poor are not radically resolved, by rejecting the absolute autonomy of markets and financial speculation, by attacking the structural causes of inequality, no solution will be found for the world's problems, or for that matter, to any problems. So inequality is severe, climate change is an enormous problem, unequal access to healthcare, education, these are all problems that in some way are related to our economic systems. We would like an economic system that would help us to at least address or perhaps even avoid some of the problems that we're now facing, like income inequality, poverty, climate change, infrastructure decay, debt, pollution, financial crises, and the list goes on and on. So in asking the question what's outside the box, maybe it's first best to start with short description of what economic system actually is. We don't usually think of an economic system this way, but an economic system actually is a type of governance, a governance structure, a decision-making system. A society uses an economic system to decide what products will be produced, by whom, using what resources, and for whose benefit. And it's my claim that outside of this socialism-capitalism gradient, we might find systems that have a deeper embedded, have democracy embedded deeper in them. In about 2 weeks, it's not quite official yet, but in about 2 weeks or so, we'll be announcing the formation of what we call the LIDA partnership. And this partnership is actually what we hope will become a large, diverse, and global partnership of academics, civil society, business, government, and philanthropy groups to usher our proposal, which is called the LIDA framework, through the development and pilot trial phases. My group, Principled Societies Project, is one of the core leaders on this. The other is the Center for Study of Governance, Governance Innovation at the University of Pretoria, South Africa. And I claim that this partnership is the first of its kind. We're using computer simulations and the best tools of science to design what is a parallel economic system that importantly, demonstrably maximizes well-being, requires that well-being actually be measured in some sense. And the strategy of this system is to complement and compete at the local level. So this is a parallel system that complements the existing system in a local economy. So what is a LIDA? I've introduced the LIDA partnership, but a LIDA itself is a local economic direct democracy association. This is a membership-based community benefit corporation that implements this new economic system, this new economic framework as a local overlay to an existing city or regional economy. And importantly, this framework offers members roughly equal and direct opportunity to influence their local economy. And in other words, this framework implements what we call a LIDA economic direct democracy. What is this framework like? It's some of these things I'm sure that some of you have heard of already. It's a synthesis of old and new approaches. It builds on ideas from buy local programs, invest local, local currency, local food, local sharing, open source, open government, participatory democracy, smart cities, and so on. So that's a little bit of background, and now I'll talk about the model itself. The paper on the simulation model will soon be published in the International Journal of Community International Journal of Community Currency Research. This is a stock flow consistent model, an agent-based model. It's an illustrative model, not a predictive model. This is just the first step in trying to describe how this system should work. The model emulates the token exchange system, or TES. In this system, the token is the local electronic currency. So that's one of the components of this whole framework, is a local electronic currency called the token. And the token exchange system sort of describes or has the rules and procedures for how dollars and tokens flow in the local economy. The aim of the paper is to create a model, a stock flow consistent model, such that every LIDA member family receives a direct income gain over baseline in every year. This is a participatory system. No one is required to join a LIDA, but for those who do, the idea is every single family that joins sees an income increase in every year over baseline. And further, the membership eventually achieves full income equality and full employment. And when I say full income equality, I mean across the board for every family, regardless of its employment status. So if a family is not in the workforce or is unemployed, this covers all families equally. And the reason that income equality is so important in this particular system is because it implements economic direct democracy. And it uses money as a voting tool. So if for example, someone had a very, very high income in this system, they would have lots of power over the economic decisions for this community. So in order to make this democratic, make this fair, so that essentially every person gets an equal size vote, the system really has to eventually achieve some large degree of income equality. And where does this money come from? For achieving these aims, again, the system increases family incomes, and then as incomes rise, they become more equal. And where does this money come from for this? It comes from essentially two sources. It comes from the local currency system, which I mentioned, the token. The LIDA injects tokens debt-free by fiat into the local economy. These tokens, this currency, can only be used locally. So it stays in the local economy. And secondly, the LIDA has essentially a buy local program, which means that it favors local businesses, encourages people to shop locally, things like that. More money circulates longer in the local economy because more people are purchasing locally produced foods or services. And between the two of these, number one and number two, the volume of the local money supply grows. So the volume of the local money supply is growing. This translates into wage gains for employees. The money is shared by a set of rules. Wages go up, and then employees share some of their wage gains with the LIDA financial system called the crowd-based financial system. This financial system, the CBFS, has some similarity to a crowdfunding type system, also to a participatory budgeting type system. And every year this cycle goes round and round and round. At the beginning, in the simulation, only about 5% of the participants, or the local population participates, and it grows year after year after year. And as it grows, more and more local currency is injected. The buy local program becomes stronger and stronger. The local money supply grows further. Wage gains continue to go higher, and then people share some portion of those wage gains with the CBFS, and the CBFS in turn creates more jobs, and the cycle just goes around and around and around, each time building upon itself. All right, so this is just a simplified schematic of what the model looks like. I'll show you a little bit more detailed picture shortly. But in this one, there's three primary agents. Organizations, which include for-profit businesses, which I call standard businesses, nonprofit organizations, and then a special type of organization called a principal business, which is a cross between a for-profit and a nonprofit that's unique to this LIDA framework. So those are all the organizations that choose to participate in a local economy, in a local area. Another agent is the person's agent, so these would be people who are employed by some organization, or perhaps they're unemployed or not in the workforce, NIWF, not in the workforce. The third primary agent is the crowd-based financial system, the CBFS, which I've already mentioned. So all of these flows, these blue lines are all flows of tokens and dollars. So for example, organizations pay wages to persons, and persons spend some of their money at local organizations. Persons also contribute to the crowd-based financial system, and the crowd-based financial system loans some money to organizations, also provides some subsidies, also provides some donations to nonprofit organizations. And organizations in turn pay back some of the loan principal that they've borrowed. Also, the crowd-based financial system provides some kind of income assistance for unemployed and not in workforce persons. So these circles go around and around and around, and the model tries to capture those flows. Several assumptions. Oh, go, please.
Are the flows all a combination of tokens and dollars?
The flows, all of those flows were a combination of tokens and dollars, yeah. I'll show you another slide that shows some other flows that are just dollars shortly. Numerous assumptions. I'm just going to cover a few of them very briefly. This is, again, a very simplified model. Married adults, two to a household. The results I'll show you are for a population of 100,000. The model world is simple: no inflation, no bank lending, no economic growth, no demographic changes. The only thing that really changes in this economy are the things that the LIDA does specifically, the direct effects of the LIDA. So this is just modeling the direct effects of the LIDA, and again, it's an illustrative model, not a predictive model. Also, the purchasing power of a token is assumed to be equal to the dollar in this model. All right, so I've showed you that virtuous cycle that goes round and round and round. So what drives that? The mechanics of it are, I mean, one mechanic I've already discussed is that the local volume of money increases, and then that's shared in various ways. But what actually drives it are several constructs. One of them is a predefined income function, a monotonic income function. This is defined by the LIDA community before the first token is ever issued. So it's essentially, this is what we expect to happen under our system. Income is going to rise, and here's how we're going to share that income rise. It's essentially what happens. So the predefined income function leads to a series of annual income targets that the community tries to reach. Likewise, there's a predefined function for the token share of income, TSI, token share of income, and it leads to an annual series of TSI targets. That is, in this local economy, a certain percentage of the money is going to be tokens, and a certain percentage of the money is going to be dollars. And there's also a participation function governing how many people join and how quickly they join. And lastly, the last construct is a wage option. There's two wage options, 1 and 2, which I'll talk about in just a moment. These are the main drivers of that virtuous cycle. This slide shows the income target. This upper line is income target in tokens and dollars, and again, the token value of the token is assumed to be equal to the dollar. But you can see that for an individual person that starts just above 20,000, this is actually where the starting value is according to the census data that I used, that I build this model on. It rises over time to just over 100,000. So incomes are going to rise substantially in this system. The upper line is tokens and dollars, the lower red line is tokens, and the green line is dollars. You can see too that at the end, the simulation period is 28 years, and by the end, tokens make up about 35% or so of the total amount of money floating in this local economy. This graph shows a little bit closer, a little bit more clearly what that TSI target is. That's this dotted green line. It starts at 0, that is, at the beginning, everything is dollars, and then slowly tokens are introduced, and by year 15 or so, it reaches its maximum of about 35% tokens. This graph shows the participation function. In year 0, there's a 5% of the local population participates, and then that grows linearly over time up to 90% in year 15. And one might wonder, why would 90% of people in a local population ever join this thing? It's because they are essentially promised an income gain. So it's in their best financial interest to join this system because they will see an income gain. And that income gain will be particularly large for people who start with very low incomes, because their income will be brought up higher and faster than someone who already has a relatively high income. So this is good for, it's essentially good for 100% of the people in the local population, because the purpose of this thing, as I mentioned briefly before, is to increase well-being for the entire community. So in that sense, everyone benefits. If the community can address its big problems, whether those are pollution problems or any other kind of problems, healthcare problems, the entire community benefits. But as far as a direct substantial economic gain goes, the lowest 90% of the population gain the most. Everyone actually gains a little bit. Even if you were very, very wealthy, you could join and still receive a very small direct economic gain. But the largest gains go to those below the 90th percentile of starting income. I mentioned one of the constructs was this wage option system. There's two choices, and this is what allows every family to see an economic gain over time, or excuse me, in comparison to baseline. There's two options. The option one tends to be useful more for those who start with low incomes, a low baseline income. So the wages are based on that income target, which you have seen is slowly rising linearly over time. And the CBFS contributions are based on a percentage of this income target. For both of these wage options, the CBF contribution rate is about 50%. That is a large contribution rate, but the way this is designed is that still take-home income after making the CBFS contributions still increases for everyone. The wage option 2 is generally useful for someone who starts at a very high baseline income. So if even if say your baseline income was $1 million a year or something, you would get an incentive bonus paid in tokens, which would be in the model about 3,000 tokens. And then you would make your CBFS contributions based on a percent of that incentive, about 50%. So you would end up, even if you were making $1 million a year as in income, you would still receive a direct bonus of essentially something worth $1,500. Not large if you're making a lot of money, but it's something. All right, so that's a little bit about the model, and now I'll show you a few results of what the model shows. So this is a mean family income for members. This is post-CBFS income, so it's like take-home income after CBFS contributions have been made. Starts at about $40,000 for the two-person household, slowly rises, and then starts to rise very quickly right around year 15. And by the end of the oh, excuse me, I'm on the wrong line here. I'm meant to be pointing at this blue line. This solid blue line is the mean post-CBFS family income. Rises over time, and then by the end of the 28-year simulation period, has reached a level just over $100,000. So if your starting income was down here somewhere, for example, on the first year, it would have, the mean family income rises by about 260% or so. This upper dotted line is the income plus the amount of savings that each family has in the system. So by the end of the 28-year period, each family has about the equivalent of about $60,000 in savings. This animation shows how the distribution of income changes. You can see the years are ticking off here at the very top. And you can see that in the very first year, the income was quite skewed. The distribution is quite skewed as it is. But this income target is rising. The income target is now close to 100,000. It's rising, it's rising, it's rising. And as it rises, more and more families are receiving this target income. That is, more and more families are choosing wage option 1. And then by the end of the 28-year period, essentially every family in this LIDA has now chosen wage option 1 and is making that $100,000 salary, $100,000 income, $100,000 plus income. I might mention that the incomes go way off the chart here. Some people make very high incomes. Only in this simulation, only people who start at below the 90th percentile of baseline income join the LIDA. So 10% of the population, the wealthy 10% or the high income 10%, don't even join, and their incomes don't change at all directly from this system. The income target goes up, and then by the end again, essentially every family is making just over 100,000. And the other thing that happens, this graph shows how it is that the community, the LIDA community, can address then the big issues like climate change and healthcare and education and all the other issues that it might want to address. This is showing how many funds are being channeled to local nonprofits and for-profit organizations obviously, when this first starts, it's channeling 0 funds to local organizations, but slowly it grows. This upper line is tokens and dollars. And by the end of the 28-year period, this LIDA is channeling over 2.5 billion tokens and dollars to local organizations. So this could, for example, the size of the nonprofit sector doubles, which you could think of maybe the number of teachers in this community doubles, for example. The volume of this money that the CBFS is channeling is on par with bank lending, essentially, if you look at an average county level. So a lot of money that a community has at its disposal to address the big problems. All right, so now a little bit on the code and how this whole thing is put together. The code itself is available at PyPy. There's a package called TES simulation at PyPy, and you can download it there if you wish. You can run it. 12 modules in the program. Again, it's an agent-based model, stock flow consistent, and records the annual incomes of individuals and their choices over time. Uses PyTables for the data storage machine, NumPy for data manipulation, PyLab, for graphics, and the rest is just straight Python. This is a slightly more complicated version of the picture that I showed you earlier. The model actually has 2 more agents that I didn't mention earlier. One is called Rest of Counties, which is essentially a rest of world agent. And then there's also a government agent. So this government agent, you can think of this government agent as a state and federal government entity. So now persons pay taxes in dollars to the government. The government provides some kind of income support for those who are unemployed. The government also gives grants and subsidies and contracts to organizations, and organizations exchange dollars and trade with the rest of counties. So they purchase products from rest of counties, and rest of counties they sell and purchase goods and services to rest of counties. And the government also ends up spending all of its excesses in the rest of counties. Again, it's a simplified model, but it captures the main flows of tokens and dollars, at least the conceptual flows. 6 main modules. The lower 5 here are just the main agents that I've already discussed: CBFS, government, organizations, persons, and rest of counties. And then there's a config module that acts in the config module, you set a bunch of parameters, and it also acts as a container to hold data for all the other classes. All right, we'll start with a little look at the oh, that's not going to work, is it? Sorry, hold on 1 second. Oh, that doesn't work either. I'm sorry, I'm having a little difficulty here. I apologize. My computer just locked up. Very unfortunate. I am sorry, the rest of my slides were a little bit of the code, how it's designed, and my computer just locked up. And I don't think it's going to be easy to fix in a second. So what I think I'll do is there any questions on any of the material that I've shown you so far? Some of you might be familiar with Bitcoin, for example. I would imagine that some of you have heard of that. This Bitcoin, as you know, really is a universal currency. It knows no national boundaries. That particular currency is based on some kind of blockchain technology. This local currency is really quite different. For one thing, it's local. It may, or depending on how we design this thing, it may or may not use a blockchain technology. I'm not sure about that. But one of the main differences is that it's local. Another main difference is that this local currency is really a part of this much wider framework that is intended to have a social impact. That is, the framework itself is intended to infuse a local economy with democracy. It's intended to result in a higher capacity of local residents to collectively make economic decisions and fund those sorts of businesses that most increase its well-being, fund those sorts of nonprofits that most increase its well-being. And that it measures well-being as part of this whole system so that it can judge whether it's moving in the right direction or not moving in the right direction. So that's really quite different from something like Bitcoin, which is just simply a way to exchange money. This really has a sort of a democratic concept behind it. Yes?
Is there any way to do that where the currency is not fiat? Fiat currency kind of makes me nervous, including the dollar.
Yeah, so that's one of the you might say selling points of Bitcoin, is that it's created in such a way that there's no person is controlling how much money can be produced, how many coins can be produced over time. This system is not like that, and there's some very good reasons for that. Essentially, if you try to use a technology that limits the limits the amount of currency that you can inject into an economy, you're essentially saying humans cannot be trusted to make good decisions, so we're going to find a technological fix such that they cannot interfere with how much money gets input into the economy over time. I would disagree with that concept by saying that if you have a system that is highly transparent and includes all the various components that this system does, that people will be able to choose reasonably the volume of currency that is appropriate for this economy. And if you have that flexibility, then the community can actually change the volume of currency over time as needs arise. If you have some kind of currency that is at a fixed volume or follows some kind of fixed growth flow, if the community actually grows faster than that, then that's a huge problem. Or if it grows slower than that, that's a huge problem. Or if there's, half the people move out of that community, then there's a huge problem. So it's really actually a benefit to have the flexibility to choose what the proper volume of currency is. And I might also add that this system is information rich. It's very transparent. It's very information rich. So people know where the volume of currency, where the flows are, what's going on at any given time. The idea is so that people can understand and have the data that they need to make reasonable decisions. Yeah. Yeah.
How do you control people being biased for one form of currency or the other? Dollars a token.
Right. So I've showed you a graph that showed that the kind of target token share of income, right? And by the end, I said that it would reach about 35% of the volume would be tokens. So there's a variety of ways that that's sort of enforced. One, the big way is that there's some mild restrictions on the outright exchange of tokens and dollars. You just can't go out and buy a whole bunch of tokens for dollars. That's essentially the main way. But the other way is that before anyone ever would join such a situation, such a membership organization, it would be very clear to them and to everyone through computer simulations, especially through localized computer simulations that's using local data, how this system is supposed to work. And it's also, as I said, a very transparent system. So if people don't follow the rules of this system, they're not going to get the results that they're promised. I mean, it's kind of like a very straightforward, very clean situation. If you do this, this is what you might likely achieve, and if you don't do this, you're going to achieve God knows what, kind of like that. And in the system, reputation is a form of currency. So if you, for example, do something that's kind of crazy, out of bounds with what should be happening, your reputation within the system would likely suffer greatly, and that probably wouldn't be very good for you in some sense. So.
Have you considered running a simulation, running like testing this model using our live participants and like a paid type lab?
Okay, you're asking about how would this thing be tested? Is that right?
Have you done it with
Yeah, okay. So let me, I didn't speak to that earlier, and that's actually a very important part, so let me just say a few words on that. This lead of partnership is a 10-year, $70 million partnership. I mean, that's how we envision it, at least. This should be a very big deal. There's going to be people involved from all over the world, different academics and other groups from all over the world. The first couple years is mostly focused on computer simulation modeling to get some groundwork. From there, it goes to an online LIDA game that also helps to generate some data and introduce concepts and allow people to kind of play with the concepts in a safe manner. The last few years, I should maybe say the middle years are focused on actually developing the code to run the framework. And then the last 2 years are focused on live pilot trials, probably one in the USA someplace, and then maybe one in South Africa. So we're going to try to span developed world and developing world. So we have to make the framework flexible enough to handle a wide variety of communities. So eventually this will be tested in a live pilot trial. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Good, good. All right, can you tell me how much time we have here? Okay.
It's 3:40 and you got till 3:50.
Okay, all right. Is there any other questions at all? I apologize that that my code system did not work. I think that I'm probably still locked up. I am still locked up. I can say that the code is well commented. I can say that, and you'll just have to look online to see how the actual structure goes. Yes?
What kind of involvement are you looking for?
Oh, as I said, the announcement of this whole partnership will happen in probably a couple weeks or so. And we're looking for involvement from, like I said, a wide variety of groups, academic groups, business groups, other groups. There's going to be, for example, I would think at least about 50 academic studies that will come out of this over time. There'll be a lot of, probably about half of that money, the budget, goes towards coding efforts. So there's going to be a very, very large coding effort. So we'll be looking for people to help us with that too also. So we'll be, if we receive funding, we'll be hiring staff to do all that. And as you might guess, this project spans just a wide variety of fields. So everything from computer science to statistics to media to literature to linguistics to agriculture to energy to manufacturing to you name it, and there's some aspect that we're touching on in this very large program. International relations, peace relations, conflict resolution, finance and economics and business, all of those fields will be touched upon. So we're looking for a very broad partnership to help us bring the expertise in to help us do this properly. All right, well, I think maybe we'll just end there. Again, I apologize for the code not working. That's quite unfortunate. But thank you very much for your attention.